Many people on your planet, because of your belief systems, make things far more difficult and complicated than they really need to be. Everything is actually fundamentally based on very simple principles. Keep it simple, and it will work much more efficiently for you rather than loading it down with all sorts of conditions and beliefs about the way things are supposed to happen, and therefore you have to slog through all sorts of details to make anything work. And it's no wonder that by the end of the day you're exhausted. Instead of riding the wave of energy and allowing it to uplift you and being left with energy. Yes? Yes.
Hello, Tadeo.
Nania.
We have a couple of questions from our Ustream listeners
right.
about self-worth. So we
Yes.
thought this would be a good time to introduce some of these questions.
All right.
How can someone value themselves when they've been devalued their entire lives until it's really deeply believed?
The way the question is being asked is perpetuating the sense and experience of devaluation. Because the question was asked, how can someone value themselves when they have been devalued as if they've been devalued by someone else, when in fact the person has devalued themselves their whole lives? So if they recognize that all they did was buy into someone else's idea about the lack of value, but the only way they would experience the devaluation was to do it to themselves, to create that energy within themselves, then they have the answer and the exit door to their experience. Because if they truly realize that they have been simply agreeing to devalue themselves, then they are empowered to do the opposite just as easily. But it takes the true recognition, an absolutely clear recognition that no one else's attempt to devalue them has any effect at all unless you believe that it does. And if you believe that it does, then you are devaluing yourself. So all you need to do to value yourself is value yourself in exactly the same way that you've been devaluing yourself your whole life. Because you've been doing it. So do something else. It's that recognition that is the key to freedom.
So when a child is raised where they're constantly told that they don't have value, and maybe
Yes.
they're even abused along with that,
Yes.
and they come out of their childhood having great difficulty in just feeling comfortable in the world.
Yes.
These are the kinds of things that people go into therapy for.
We understand. And therapy is for the purpose of getting them to understand they don't have to buy into the idea that they've been given as if it is a fact.
Right.
They are then allowed to understand it is nothing but that person's belief. It is nothing but that person's issue that has been then given to them as an opportunity to buy into it or not. And once again, they understand that whatever another person thinks has absolutely no effect, literally no effect on anyone. They will start to understand they've been doing it to themselves. And then that's the key that allows them to stop doing that.
It seems like there's a two-stage process. Like one part of the process is recognizing that you actually were devalued or that you were treated wrongly in childhood, because this way you can start to recognize that it happened to you and that
we understand. We're not saying that you can't recognize that someone else is not behaving with integrity.
Right.
But that's not the issue.
Well, I'm talking about once people become adults.
Yes.
And then they're attempting to transform their
Yes.
level of self-worth.
Yes.
Part of the recognition is recognizing that it happened. That
of course, you have to
empowers you right
acknowledge that, but you also have to acknowledge, when you understand it, that you have been doing it to yourself.
Right, because you're taking it a step further and helping us
Absolutely.
understand that all along the only reason that would affect you like that is because you bought into what you were saying.
Yes. Taking the further step is the exit route.
Right. And so when children are experiencing that and they're dependent on their parents
Yes.
for their survival,
Yes.
they are designed to accept it, aren't
Yes.
they?
In a sense, although not every child does. But yes, we understand that because of the legacy of belief systems that you're taught over generations, most children are taught to accept those things because they are taught to believe that if they don't, they may not survive. They will not get the support that they need from their parents or whoever is feeding them those ideas. And again, please remember that many of these things have come from experiences within the parents about their own self-devaluation. Therefore, they're simply passing it along like genetics.
So on a soul level, when you make the decision to incarnate into a dysfunctional family situation,
Yes.
where these kinds of things go on,
Yes.
why would the soul choose that?
Why not? It's a very powerful way to transform limitation into freedom, darkness into light, negative into positive.
So some of the positive things that come out of that basically can be increased compassion for others.
Yes.
And I guess my understanding is most families are dysfunctional on the planet to some degree.
Many,
So
yes.
the ability to choose a family
Yes.
where you would get better treatment, let's say,
Yes.
is that it's not really part of the design.
Everyone has a different theme.
Right. So that situation can be used to help perpetuate the theme that you're exploring, which would be moving from feeling like you don't have self-worth into feeling that you do,
Yes.
and knowing that you have value.
Yes.
So I think that a lot of times people who are survivors, in a sense,
Yes.
they carry a lot of guilt, and they feel like at some level they deserved what happened to them. And then they also are concerned that why at another level would I ever choose this for myself?
We understand, but all of those questions and all of those assumptions come from not understanding how it really works. And when they do, they can be free.
So the whole thing happens in order for them to become able to choose how they believe about themselves rather than relying on external circumstances to determine your value.
Imagine, once a person wraps their mind around the understanding that they never had to buy into that as a fact, that they have been doing it to themselves all their lives. Once a person understands that and breaks free from that, imagine how powerful and indestructible they are from that point forward.
Because when you're devaluing your...
Did you hear what we said?
Yes.
Did you hear what we said?
Right. I am, because I'm also translating it into the idea that the disempowered state...
Which is not an actual state of disempowerment.
Right.
It is using your power to create the illusion of disempowerment.
Like, you can tell if you're disempowering yourself when you feel bad, when you don't have energy, where you don't want to do certain things. You just don't feel good about yourself.
Yes.
These are states of choosing disempowerment.
Yes, but again, the recognition that you're using your power to create an experience of disempowerment is the key that frees you from doing it that way.
Right. I mean, I think that that's what you're presenting to all of us,
Yes.
is basically that
it's the power of paradox.
Right. The idea that you're never possessed, that nothing ever happens to you without your agreement on some level.
It happens through you.
And regardless of what it looks like is happening to you,
Yes.
choosing to devalue yourself because you judge what is happening to you,
Yes.
then perpetuates the state of disempowerment.
Of course.
So the idea is that once you understand what it feels like to feel empowered, which isn't insisting on dominating other people or anything
that's not
like
empowerment.
That. Empowered, can you go a little bit into what does the empowered state feel like so that we can all recognize that when we're in that state?
It goes into the idea of your indestructible core. Knowing that you exist and that your existence is absolutely valid. It is a sense of absolute validation, a sense of pure being, that nothing can be experienced by you that you don't agree to experience.
And that state of being, which most people at some point in their life experience, even if it's just momentarily, can be recreated just by remembering the circumstance when you felt empowered.
Because in order to remember the circumstance where you felt empowered, you actually have to be in a state of empowerment. Remember, you can't experience what you're not the vibration of first. So the trick, we often say, well, if you want to get back into the same state, even if it doesn't feel the same, just remember what it felt like when you were in that state and you'll be back in that state, is actually a trick, because in order to actually be able to remember being in the state, you have to be in the state. That's the trick.
So once you recognize that state, the idea is then to recognize when you're not in that state and to take actions within yourself.
Yes.
In order to recreate the positive
If
state.
that's what you prefer, of course.
Well, most people prefer to feel good. Yes?
No. That's the dilemma that you've created for yourselves, is you have belief systems attached to your motivational mechanisms that make many people on your planet actually prefer not to feel good, because they think that feeling good is attached to some negative idea that's worse. That's the point.
So in fact, some people will choose not to feel good because their parents told them they weren't allowed to, in a sense, or taught them that they weren't allowed to. And then they feel like they're betraying their parent
Yes.
by feeling good.
Exactly.
It can be at that deep a level.
Therefore, they have attached the idea of a belief to feeling good that countermands their desire to feel good, because they don't necessarily want to betray their parents or dishonor their parents, and that somehow has been ingrained in them as being more important than being themselves, which would actually be the true honoring of the parents, whether the parents understand that or not.
So we have an interesting challenge here on Earth.
Yes, you do.
Because most people are raised to devalue themselves in some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
Because of beliefs that are passed
Well,
on
that's
from the
why it's a master graduating class. Nobody said it would be simple and easy in terms of the experience, but what you're learning is that the answer is simple and easy.
And so for us to have contact and not go into psychic shock, basically,
Yeah.
the self-worth issue is really at the core of the ability to be
Yes.
able to have contact.
It is crucial, because contact with us and beings like us is inviting you into an altered state of consciousness. And if your consciousness doesn't know what to do with that altered state, you're not necessarily going to have a lot of fun in that contact, because it's going to bring things up within you that haven't been integrated.
And that's the compartmentalization that you're talking about, that the issues around self-worth are often compartmentalized in your belief system.
Yes.
And accessing those compartments, in a sense.
Yes.
The best way to do that is to
act on your highest passion to the best that you are able, with absolutely no insistence on what the outcome should be. That's the formula that unlocks the complete kit and all the tools you need. And then whatever happens from whatever the actions are that you take, whatever the result may be, always identify it as something that will be positive and beneficial as an effect in your life. Even if what manifests is something you don't prefer, the reason that it's there must be serving you in a beneficial way. And that's all you need to do.
And the reason that's so powerful is because the way the universe works is it's designed to help you recognize your value.
The way existence works. Not just your universe.
So in that design of you being able to recognize your worth, everything that you encounter is an opportunity to recognize when you're devaluing yourself and when you're not, when you're supporting yourself, when you're not, when you're abandoning yourself and when you're not.
Yes.
And since it's built into the fabric, if you trust the unfoldment
Yes.
of your life, then you will know
Yes.
that unfoldment is designed to show you
Absolutely.
your value.
You
not
have
to
the
devalue
ultimate
you.
feedback system. That's why we say physical reality is a reflection. You are always given the feedback of what you put out. So you can always self-correct. It's a self-perpetuating, self-guiding system. Use it. When something doesn't feel right, when you're buying into negative beliefs, you're always going to get the feedback of feeling something out of whack, as you say, thinking something out of whack, behaving in some way that's out of alignment. You always have those opportunities and feedback systems to tell you there is something out of alignment in what you believe to be true about yourself. Find out what it is and let it go, and the feedback system will show that you have course corrected.
And in the area of like survival of the fittest, I mean,
Depends on how you define what means by fittest.
Right. As a competitive species, let's say that that's built into our biology.
To some degree.
To compete, and in nature, it's always reflected to us that competing, the top dog, whatever you want to call it, that's important for survival. So as part of our transcendence
Yes.
of this idea of, let's say a person doesn't feel physically capable of competing, or they don't feel that they're as good as other people.
Everyone has something to give. The competition is not against anyone but yourself. And remember that you have no business and actually no ability comparing yourself to anyone else, because you're all unique. You all are parts of the whole puzzle picture. Just be the shape you were created to be, and you will fit with all the other puzzle pieces also being the shape that they were created to be. And everyone has a piece of the puzzle, and together makes up the whole picture that then supports all the pieces. Just be who you are. And you have, in that action alone, surmounted anything that has to do with competition and survival. You have given yourself the idea of surviving as who you truly are, because who you truly are is the fittest thing for you to survive as. Nothing else will actually allow you to survive. Being someone you're not is what kills you. That's not survival. Being who you are is the fittest thing you can be.
Essentially, you're saying that to unconditionally love and accept the unique piece of the puzzle that you express,
Or the puddle.
regardless of how that looks to other people or how that looks to you.
Yes, as long as you are also honest in your own self-reflection that you are not out of alignment or out of integrity in what it is you are expressing.
So
you have to have the honest self-discernment to know that you're not just, as you would say, just acting willy-nilly because you think it's okay to do anything you want. That's not the issue we're talking about here. We're talking about being the true self and having the honest discernment to be able to tell the difference between your true excited self and one that might be a version of you that is simply filled with anxiety that is being disguised as excitement.
Right, or rebellion or anger that's
Yes.
being expressed in some other way.
But you see, the idea again is to understand paradox and the power that exists within it. Because when you talk about things like rebellion, people who rebel are the ones who are most controlled by the ones they're rebelling against. Because if you don't believe that in any way, shape, or form they have any power over you, what have you got to rebel against? Rebellion is a sign that you believe you're controlled.
So it still comes down ultimately to unconditionally accepting
Yes. Your true
your
self.
true self.
And being that. And then walking that path.
And then people can get into judging themselves because they're not their true selves and they're still expressing themselves
They can,
with other issues.
but
and
if they're
things like
being their
that.
true self, then they won't.
Right. So then you have to give positive meaning to the difference between what your true self is and what your self is in the current state.
Yes.
Don't heap more negativity onto the idea that you're not who you'd like to be.
Unless you simply want to spiral down in misery. If that's your choice, then by all means, heap away. But that's going to be the result.
It's just so interesting how we can trick ourselves into getting into negative states.
Welcome to physical reality.
Right. And also because if there are self-worth issues, which is pretty much true for most people on the planet, you're going to have the temptation of falling into negative beliefs about yourself in order to seemingly help yourself.
Yes.
But that's actually
But
not
don't
the way to
give
do it.
in to temptation. It's not who you are. Remember, negative beliefs are filling your ears with lies about yourself. They have to. They have to convince you that the lie is true. They have to work very hard at it because it's not the truth. The positive beliefs don't have to work hard at all because what they're telling you about yourself is true. The negative beliefs have to work very hard and use all sorts of tools and tactics and smoke and mirrors and lies to get you to buy into the fact that you're unworthy because it's not true. That should be your first clue. When you feel the most fear, that's when you know the negative beliefs are working very hard to convince you that you are not worthy. But you have to see through that fear as a trick of the negative belief. It's just an illusion because it has to work that much harder to convince you that you're not worthy because it's not a fact.
That's that list you went through in the black box.
Yes.
About all the different ways negative belief systems seek to keep you.
Well, it wasn't all the ways, but it was a lot of them.
And the way that these kinds of knots, mental knots that
Yes.
we get into as humans at this stage. And that's what we always have to remember, isn't it? That it's at
Yes.
this stage.
At this stage.
And it will naturally progress towards greater and greater
Just
levels.
do your best. That's all you need to do. Just always check in honestly with self-discernment to make sure, are you doing the best you can? If not, do your best. If you are, relax. And keep doing it. What is your time?
I think it's probably time.
Then all of you enjoy your nourishment break. We will resume this transmission afterwards. Thank you. How's it going?
Great, great.
Thank you.